out.
I know. Isn't that exciting?
That's exciting. Speaking of exciting, here we are. Hello, everybody. Shane
Hello.
and Amy.
Yes. And we're going to get in and out on this one because we have been in the middle of a really rigorous conversation now for a couple of days. And I just said, this needs to be the episode. Like, this is live in our world right now. And we both currently, which is oftentimes rare, are dealing with clients that have teams of people that they're leading. And the thing that we currently have in common, me as a consultant, Shane as a coach, which those two things are as different and as far away from each other as the gap in the Grand Canyon. And one day we're going to talk about that. Right.
That's right.
Because
right.
I'm so sorry. You cannot be a coach and a consultant. But for the first time, Shane, and that is my opinion. And we will dive into all those reasons why, maybe on the next episode, Shane, that could be a good one.
Yeah.
But for the first time, you and I are navigating similar team dynamics from two different angles. You as the coach and dealing with leadership development things, and me as the consultant using technology and also having to navigate leadership development things. And so one thing that we've really been talking about is a team's response to change. And I know for me, I'll share what I'm observing. And Shane, I'm curious to know what you're observing amongst the teams that you're working with. But one of the things that I'm observing is this idea that we're faced with a desired outcome. And in order for us to achieve that desired outcome for the first time, it is going to require things from us that we've never been willing to deal with before, right? So it's requiring new skills. It's requiring different ways of interacting with each other. It's requiring different communication styles. It's requiring trust with an outside person that we've never experienced before. Like, it's requiring a new skill set. And what I observe in some teams, so I have seen teams where when this is presented to them, the wrestle is very real and it is expected. And just because someone is wrestling with a skill doesn't mean that they are negatively approaching it. Right, Shane? Like, just because you're wrestling through something and having questions and showing frustration and even at times shutting completely down is not negative to me. Like, those are responses that I like to see because it means you're emotionally, mentally, and physically engaged in the idea of change, right? And when there is a holistic expression to change, things tend to happen faster. But where I have seen teams quickly lose steam is when they've wrestled there too long and have refused to ask for help. So they've been wrestling alone, like, okay, each team member wrestling separate from each other and not coming together and either one just saying, hey, this stinks and I don't really know if I want to do it. Like, not having a full expression of honesty about what these feelings are bringing out, or they're not willing to talk about it and they're not willing to ask for help from the people that they have paid to help them. And that is what I see, is these responses to change and then the effects of not managing the response. And that's where you tend to lose steam on change, and then things don't really get done or they get lost in limbo. What has been your experience, Shane, with teams that are navigating change?
Yeah, very similar. When I see leaders who don't manage change effectively, they do a couple of things consistently. Like, so regardless of industry, these leaders who ineffectively manage change do just very couple of few things, and they have these things in common. The first thing that they do is they set an expectation that they do not model. So they set an expectation of, hey, we're doing things different around here. We're going to go this direction. And then they keep going their own direction. So they set an expectation that they don't model. That causes confusion among the team. They don't know if we really are going or are we staying. Are we all about making the sacrifices that are necessary to go in this new direction, or are we just playing games?
Yeah.
Right. Because that's what it comes down to, for a leader to be able to say, we're going to go this direction. The first thing, if you want to manage change effectively, that I would say I've seen work is you set the expectation, but you also model it. You begin to step into these new behaviors.
Yeah.
The other thing that I think is that leaders who don't effectively manage change do consistently is they over explain. Right. So they forget that no one likes change except for the person who introduces it. Not one person, nobody. They don't like it. Like, so the leaders all fired up. They're excited. They think it's going to change everything. And they come in and they say, this is the way we're going to go. And everybody's like, this will never work. And that's the moment where the leader just starts to over explain. They start to over communicate the why behind it. That's not what people need in the moment of change. Leaders who manage it effectively, they get the idea that in those moments of change, what people need most is to be understood. They don't need to understand more about the change.
Yeah.
They need the leader who will understand them. The way the leader does that is they listen. So when someone says this will never work, they ask good questions. Tell me what you see that I can't see. Tell me more about how this impacts you. Tell me what won't work. I want to hear from you. I want to learn. So they have this elevated curiosity when people resist appropriately in this change shift. I guess that's just normal. So they don't get freaked out by it. They can just stay in it. And that keeps them from over communicating. So anyway, just a couple of thoughts there on what it looks like to not manage it effectively that I've seen, and what it looks like from some who I have seen manage it more effectively.
Yeah. So I heard you say that two big takeaways that I want everyone to take away from here is that if we're going to lead change effectively, where it actually comes through to a result that we can all see the effects of the change, is number one, we have to cast the vision, let them know what's expected, and then model that expectation. Model the behavior, model the actions, model the course that we want the people to go on. Right? Is that, I heard you say that right?
Absolutely. 100%. That's it.
Okay. And then the second thing I heard you say was that when people are, the only person that is excited about change is the one bringing the change to the table, right? The visionary is always fired up, but the people hearing it, they have different reactions, and most of the time it is not excitement.
Most of the time it is freaked out.
Yes, most of the time it is freaked out. So the best thing to do in that situation is to create an environment of understanding. And so when they start to show pushback, and I would even go so far, because in most environments, Shane, especially the ones I've been in, there is not pushback shown to the leader because it's not the cultural norm. You push back privately behind their back to other people on the team that feel the same way.
Yeah.
So as leaders, we could we, I'm asking you this question, could we create an environment that draws out the frustration, the fear? Could we create that environment on more than one occasion? In a group environment, maybe when it's first cast. Second, get everyone together and say, okay, now that it's been 7 days later, what are your thoughts? What are your concerns? What do you see as the obstacle to achieving this? Right? Those questions could create an environment. Okay.
Absolutely.
And then could it be that another layer of creating understanding is what was introduced to me many years ago called walking management, where you actually walk into each of these managers' offices and areas, enter their worlds, and ask them, I am curious one-to-one, just no one else listening, what are you most excited about in this change that we're embarking on? And what is your biggest concern? How do you feel like this is going to affect you? Do you think that those postures as a leader will draw out the concerns quicker rather than stuffing it down and waiting for people to come to us?
Yep. So I just love how we're walking out what the difference between consulting and coaching is, because
Yes.
people just experienced it. That was it right there. That was it. And so I was in that spirit, I'll stay with that theme. I'll say yes, but right. Yeah. Yes. If you have a leader who understands there are three critical success factors in that open dialogue in the midst of change to give people voice. And those three critical success factors are facial expression, body language, and tone of voice. Because you can shut down that openness if you bring any judgment, any condemnation, any shame in your responses, and people aren't listening to your words. They're listening to your body language, your facial expression, and your tone of voice. And then on the back end of it, when we're talking about, this idea of consistency, that's the other thing that I see leaders that they don't do well. The ones who don't manage change, they don't stay consistent with those conversations. They have one or two and they think it's good, and then they move on. Yeah. Well, the team is not traveling at the same pace that leader is, because they haven't lived with this change as long. So that leader's got to stay in that conversation over a longer period of time. Make sense?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, which means that the leader has to be incredibly careful about the amount of change they lead.
Really.
Like, you can't just be like throwing every new shiny object at your team and expect them to just grab hold and walk it out and execute it. Like, it's just not gonna fly. You will have very few outcomes and a lot of frustrated team members, because nobody wants to be a part of something that was cast that never happened. It's so demoralizing.
Listen, I got labeled. My ideas got labeled flavor of the month. Oh, that's flavor of the month. Like, I was just a dumper of ideas, and that's what happens. You throw too much out that people can't consume and process through and see progress on, and it becomes flavor of the month.
Yeah. Well, and that's ultimately what most leaders do, especially visionaries. Those people that believe that you are working on the business and it's not your job to work in the business is who I'm talking about here. But we're going to leave this episode with this, because if you study great people in history, they were able to work in their thing and work on the thing. So, you take, for example, in sports, you had Mike Tyson, who was heavyweight and lightweight, right? You had Michael Jordan, offense and defense. You have Bill Gates, who was hardware and software. Like, it wasn't just one or the other, it was both. And some of the best business minds understand what grew their success, knew when to outsource, knew how to measure the results of that new workload within the process, and then they could duplicate it over and over. And without really attending to one or two things at a time, it's impossible to do that. So I want you to think on these things, especially the points that Shane gave us today, because they're very, very powerful. And if you have got a team of even you and one other person, you are a team. And it is very important that you consider the change you want to lead and what is going to be the impact to the people in the change with you. And I promise you that will give you, it will give you much better results than you will if you just are pulling out the flavors of the month, so to speak, right? Yep. It will get you much farther. So just remember that systems run the business, but people run the business, especially the change people. So we hope you guys have a great day.